Hi, folks. Just wanted to let you all know that we will be starting exactly at 12:30, and thank you for your patience. Welcome to this afternoon's session. Well, that will never work. And we'll be getting started right now. So my name is Jay Silver, and I am your producer for today. During the presentation, you may ask questions at any time by using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. There's also a chat button that you may use to communicate with presenters and attendees, and that's similar to a discussion board. Now, when sending a chat, you have the option to send it just to the presenters. There's a two drop-down arrow, or to panelists and all attendees. Presenters will respond to questions in the Q&A box, so be sure to put your questions there. And if you need assistance at any time, you may also use the Q&A box for that. Thank you, and now I'll turn it over to today's presenters to get started. Presenters, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. You can start your cameras and your microphones and share your screens.
Can you see the screen?
Well, you need to click the Start Sharing button at the bottom of your screen.
Got it.
Sharing button, okay? And then select the screen and click Share.
Give us a second here.
That's great.
You got it?
We see it. Thank you. And you may want to, if that's a slideshow, you may want to go to full screen slide mode.
Just the slide.
There we go.
We have our own techie here. We have a daughter that's our techie. Okay. So hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Brill, and I'm here with my husband, John.
Hello.
And unfortunately, our daughter, Alexa, has been very sick all week, and she's unable to join us. She's in the other room recuperating. I'll be doing her parts. She's watching it on another computer right now. So first, I just want to let all of you know that this is not a research-based presentation, nor is it an established model for inclusion, and we're not presenting as professionals. We are presenting as individuals who have gained these particular experiences. We're sharing these experiences with the hope that you too will find something useful from this presentation. There were many more barriers that we faced throughout Alexa's lifespan, but these are just some of the events that impacted John's inner thoughts that said, well, that will never work. I never once knew he was hesitant in our ability or Alexa's ability to accomplish any one of these goals. He always showed full support and agreement, for which I am so grateful. He never once showed discouragement. We did, however, always have the same vision from the very beginning, and that was that we wanted to be sure that if we were no longer here to support Alexa, that she was comfortable and confident in this world, able to make her own decisions, able to go wherever, able to live wherever, and able to do whatever she wanted, just like all of us, and had all the supports she needed to be happy and live a life of independence. At first, I want to talk a little bit about the importance of our attitudes, assumptions, and beliefs. They can either hold us back or they can help us move ahead. Now, what is it that stops us from doing things? What do we truly believe? Fear is often a big reason we don't try new things or things that feel uncomfortable. What if we asked ourselves, what's the worst thing that can happen? That's been like a mantra of mine from the beginning. Sometimes it's fear of failing or looking bad or messing up or being embarrassed in front of others. Try to visualize this happening and prepare yourself for this possibility. Then just accept it. I've always viewed inclusion as a civil right, and it is. So my attitudes have always forced me to do things I'm uncomfortable doing, because the end result is much more important than my own feelings or anyone else's feelings. We've always wanted Alexa to be as comfortable in this world as any and all of her peers. Her rights are equal to theirs. So think, what if you believed your negative inner voice and you never attempted something you wish you had? While I'm shocked, I'm so proud that John decided not to listen to his inner voice based on his own then current assumptions and beliefs. So, how do we acquire some of our attitudes, assumptions, and beliefs? Well, this is what our family was told to identify with. On some of Alexa's records in the beginning, it said 13-week premature infant, spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy, doctors and therapists, visits abound. Everything is stressed with the focus on improvement and getting better physically, trying to get our children to the norm. There is always a stigma surrounding them. This forms our initial attitudes, assumptions, and beliefs. We assume if they don't reach that norm, then our children have to become a part of the already established system that has been created for special education, segregated community places, activities, etc. I believe all of our attitudes, assumptions, and beliefs are a direct result of our experiences. What have we learned in our lifetimes? All of our explorers challenged their own lived experiences and stretched the believed facts at the time. What if our early space explorers believed it was impossible to set foot on the moon? Well, we need to do the same thing. If you can envision your child or any person with a disability being able to do something that others who do not have a disability are doing, then try to figure out why it's not happening. So let's get started. This was one of Alexa's slides. I've been given permission to do this. So thanks for, I guess I won't do her wording, okay. I am, okay. So Alexa told me about this when she was in college, when she felt sad or had anxiety. And I never knew this about her either. This is something she kept to herself and thought of it as a fact. So her quotes are on this slide. I thought all people with disabilities were happy and strong. I never realized that they had the same emotions and abilities as everyone else. Everyone I ever met at conferences and rallies were always happy and strong. That belief always helped me to not allow myself to be depressed. I thought people with disabilities had a unique gene that no one else had. Wow, I never could imagine that that's how she felt. And she said, I honestly thought that we just had a different gene. And so every time she got depressed, she thought of all of the mentors and leaders that she had met at other places. So as a thought provoker, what impact did this action have on Alexa's life today? Now, what if we never connected Alexa to others who had disabilities who would serve as strong role models? How would that have changed her life? Was it worth the effort? Very early on, we gave her those experiences through having to read things from newspaper articles about local events and rallies that were happening, and then state and national events. But it's up to us as parents to give them that exposure and experience. Slide 4. This is also Alexa's slide. This is Alexa's house after moving in 4 years ago. So we're starting with this one just to give you, and many of you have probably seen this already, but this is, we wanted to show you what it's like now, today, and then you get to see backwards, how it started from day one. So this is just a very short 4-minute video.
There we go. Alexa living on her own in her own house was not the future I'd expected or envisioned when she received her diagnosis of cerebral palsy back in 1990. I was struggling to adjust to all the constraints and things that Alexa would not be able to do. Kathy, thank goodness, had a far different vision and set of expectations for Alexa and her family. I'm a visual learner. I'm also famous or infamous for using analogies and stories to explain things. Several years ago, as I had some downtime, I began committing some of these memories or milestones in our family experiences with Alexa to writing. It was only after Kathy discovered these writings a few years ago that she learned how hesitant and even afraid I had been to set higher expectations for Alexa than the typical culture suggested. I was afraid of the disappointment and frustration that failure would cause for Alexa and for her family. I perceived it as safer for us to go with the status quo.
So in the beginning,
I remember setting up the Apple Macintosh 2 in the study area when we lived in Reading, Pennsylvania. Alexa was using a specialized snug seat stroller for us to push her around in the house. I guess she was around 3 or 4 years old. She would sit and watch me as I would do some homework on the computer. I noticed one time that she was really watching intensely as I used the big Kensington trackball to move the cursor on the screen. I asked her if she wanted to try, and she nodded her head yes. So I pushed and wiggled, finagled her around till she could get her hand near the trackball. I remember thinking, well, that will never work, and feeling sad at the anticipated frustration, disappointment. It seemed obvious to me to come.
but it did work. And what if we had never tried? What if we had assumed she wouldn't be able to operate it? We had been attempting to teach ourselves and Alexa how to use a specialty software called Connects that used a big jelly bean switch, which just allowed her to make a couple of moves at a time on the screen. And we were told that that was going to be wonderful because she was going to be able to access the computer that way. But what we don't think of sometimes is determination, the determination of Alexa in wanting to access the computer like we were doing.
I remember coming home from work one day, very busy, and I entered the house, found myself walking past Alexa. She sat in a hot pink Quickie P500. This one's purple without a headrest, but it's pretty much the same chair. And she was just making a perpetual left-hand turn, a slow left-hand jerky turn moving to the left. Alexa had her right hand on the joystick and was slowly applying pressure. I could see from the tire tracks in the rug that this left-hand turn was all she'd done. Kathy and the physical therapist who'd been working with us were standing in the other doorway watching Alexa with big grins on their face as I passed through the room. I'm sure Kathy had told me about this project, but I couldn't remember. I do remember thinking, well, that will never work, and feeling sad at the anticipated frustration, disappointment that seemed obvious to me to come.
I would take Alexa to the mall every day to practice driving. John would take her to the supermarket and to Lowe's. The bookstore staff knew her and never minded when she'd drive into their store and bump into their displays and knock it all over the place. And this happened on almost a daily basis until she got control of that chair, which indeed she did because she was persistent. We were persistent. We just never gave up. It took her quite a while to learn how to drive straight, but what if we had never tried and persisted? With children who are similar to Alexa, who are reluctant to try for fear of wall damage, the physical capabilities of their children, damage to the chair, transportation issues, insurance issues, running into other people. We hear all of these things from people who think that their children are not quite ready to use a power wheelchair. Well, I guarantee you, there are so many adaptations to a wheelchair that absolutely would not be a problem. And we've had numbers of holes in our walls, but John just keeps fixing them, keeps putting whatever that schmuck is that goes into them. The price they pay for independence for their child Alexa's power wheelchair gave her control for the very first time in her life. So let's talk about Alexa's mentor. She wanted to talk about this one as well, but I get it now. So Alexa had a lot of school anxiety in the 3rd grade, especially after her joystick fell on her lap on the school bus. She had her surgery in her hips in June, and they were still quite tender. We had no idea how to help her with her anxiety, and she herself had no idea why she was crying and why she was upset. But her school guidance counselor recommended an adult who also drove a wheelchair, who might therefore better understand her anxiety. And we thought, what a great idea. And it worked like a charm. However, I had my own paradigm shifts at that time. Alexa's mentor, Nancy, and her husband, Leo, invited Alexa to a day-long field trip one time to a museum and a picnic by the river. Both Nancy and Leo used power wheelchairs. And I remember thinking, well, that will never work. I was thinking, what were the barriers? Transportation, 3 wheelchairs in the one van, really? How are they going to eat? Etc. I was thinking all the negative barriers that were in front of me without thinking positively. And my nose was stuck fast to the window all day long, waiting for them to return. And Nancy later told me that she wanted us as a family to learn another lesson, and that is about how people with disabilities could be independent in the future, what Alexa's life was going to look like in the future without us, allow us to realize a life of independence for Alexa. Nancy was a mentor to Alexa weekly for 3 years, and it was amazing, and I so strongly recommend it. Now, in each of these, there are barriers, and the first thing we have to do, that we did, I should say, is what are those barriers, and figure out what they are, and then figure out how to problem solve. So some parents might be asking, well, how do you find a mentor? That is a barrier. What are the attitudes of this? So in our case, it was us as parents. What are the physical barriers, which of course I just mentioned to you. So in each of these, there are barriers that need to be problem solved or at least addressed.
I remember Kathy and I were fortunate to have an elementary school principal who worked almost as hard as we did at having Alexa fully integrated into regular ed classes. Alexa and her power wheelchair required a vehicle with a wheelchair lift to get to school, however. The alternate transportation that was standard operating procedure meant that Alexa wasn't at the same bus stop, bus ride. Her entire schedule was out of sync with her sister and her neighborhood friends. Kathy asked me why a lift could not be put on a regular bus so that Alexa would not be segregated because of her wheelchair. I knew that such equipment existed, but I'd never seen one on a school bus before back in the 1990s. Kathy suggested we petition the district to meet Alexa's need, indeed, her right to be included in the unwritten curriculum as much as possible, which would include school transportation by way of a school bus outfitted with a wheelchair lift. I remember thinking, oh, that's never going to work, and feeling sad at the anticipated frustration and disappointment that seemed obvious to come.
So this effort was our biggest and most challenging. It took a great deal of work, time, and patience. But the supports that we had on our side were the ADA, 504, and IDEA. We had to figure out which pieces of it were the ones that would support us. I had started learning about school transportation years before while attending conferences like this one. Actually, it may have started at a TASH conference. And there are barriers there, of course. So what are you up against? Who or what is pushing against you? Well, we had many. There were attitudes of the administrators, the bus vendors, the school board members, parents, other students. We heard a school board member call it, we're opening up a can of worms. The training of how to do the tie downs, and a lot more went into it. This is actually one of the things that I'm going to be doing an e-course on my website, which is listed on the last page, and other worksheets on it. So if you are interested in more about this, you can find out about that later. Next slide. Here's our ice rink. So this is also Alexa's. Alexa was at a classmate's birthday party at an ice rink, and no one thought she'd be able to get on the ice. Well, we as adults, I should say, didn't think she'd be able to get on the ice, but would just have fun, at least having fun chatting with her classmates while they were off the ice. And well, her classmates had a different idea, and they pushed Alexa's wheelchair over the rink edge and onto the ice, none of us noticing. None of the adults noticed this for quite a while, as a matter of fact, but all of a sudden, one of the parents looked up and noticed what was happening. Alexa was driving her chair in circles around the rink, around the edges, I should say, with all of the party goers held onto the back to form a whip. And they had so much fun for the rest of the party. So that gave us like an aha. John?
I remember after the party experience, which I had not seen, Alexa wanted to go to Friday night skating with her neighbors and her sister. I remembered thinking, well, that'll never work, and feeling sad and the anticipated frustration, disappointment. It seemed obvious to me to come.
So on her first Friday night skate, John and I drove Alexa, her sister, and the neighborhood kids to the rink, and then just dropped them off. We did not come in so that they couldn't send Alexa away. That was our little ploy. But in her backpack was a copy of the ADA guidelines, which I had gotten from calling the ADA hotline. And they in turn assured me that yes, it was under correct, we were correct that it was covered under the ADA. They faxed, if you remember those things called fax machines, they faxed us a copy of the regulations with the part underlined. And we had it stuffed in the back of Alexa's school bag on the back of her chair. Her sisters and the neighborhood kids looked out for her, and they were waiting for the safety guards for the ice to tell her that she had to get off the ice, at which time they would give them the ADA paper then. Well, that never happened. The safety guards kept a close eye on her the entire time, but never asked her to get off the ice. We were all...
I'm sorry.
That's okay. We were all prepped up for the conflict that never happened. So again, we looked at the barriers. Were there legal ones that could support us? The attitudes of the owner of the rink and the safety workers and maybe other parents. The effect on other skaters. Would there be safety issues? She and her sister were asked then by the girls' ice hockey team to join their newly developed traveling team, which they did. Alexa became the statistician, and at the beginning and end of the games, she had the opportunity to join the team on the ice. She even had her own ice hockey stick that the career and tech ed students adapted for her. She also continued with her Friday night skates. After a few years, the owner of two of the rinks called us up and asked if Alexa would please be in the new ads for his rinks, as he now realized what is truly important in life. And quote, all I ever get are petty complaints about the need to change a light bulb, etc. But when I watch Alexa and her friends on the ice together having fun, I think this is what it is truly all about, unquote. Alexa was then interviewed by the news team while on the ice with her teammates. They ended the clip with the whole team making a whip off the back of her chair as she drove around them. So changing attitudes happens naturally when people automatically gain new experiences.
I remember my brother and sister wanted to celebrate my parents' 50th wedding anniversary at Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. The plan was that the three families would rent one of those big beach villas and surround my parents with their families for a week. I remember thinking, well, that'll never work. And I was pretty distressed and frustrated at this. I was actually quite pissed off and angry with my siblings for their lack of consideration of Alexa's power wheelchair and the beach, that they don't get along. I was upset that they wanted my family to join into something that would not allow Alexa to be fully involved. Actually segregated from all the action. I had a headache in my heart. The good news was that the initial discussion to this occurred 2 years prior to the anticipated celebration. There were two reasons for this. Money, even divided by 3, renting one of those houses costs quite a bit. And 2, John's brother and sister were aware of Alexa's wheelchair limitations regarding the beach and pretty much laid out a challenge to us to come up with a solution, if at all possible. We had 1 year. If we couldn't, then we would have to come up with a different way to celebrate. Now the pressure was on. Luckily, we had a secret weapon. I worked at the local career and technical school. Our programs are always on the lookout for live work for the students to hone their skills on, especially when it involved problem solving. I found some big wheels and took them and her first pink wheelchair to the school with me one day with the request, get those tires on that wheelchair.
And figure out how to make it work, how to balance and all that, yeah.
And this was the result. Success at Virginia Beach.
And Alexa always refused to go on the pushchairs on the beach. She had tried it once and hated losing her independence, so she refused. And of course, this was a fantastic solution.
We were able to, our whole family was able to participate fully in my parents' 50th anniversary at Cape Hatteras. Her chair was able to go into the water, drive around at night, and we all had a great time.
Well, not into the water too far.
Not too far. However, being a guy, I couldn't resist putting Alexa in the wheelchair in the snow to see just what would happen. We still have the frame of this wheelchair in storage.
And we loaned it out too. No, it's you.
Now we come to high school graduation. High school, all the fighting, all the working with neighborhood people, schools, business. Now what? I remember doing the college application and visit thing with Alexa, just as we had with her sisters before her. We worked our way through the public school year, school activities, but now our youngest girl was looking at schools that were pretty far away, and I was getting scared. Alexa finally decided on attending Edinburgh University, about 5 hours, 300 miles from our home. Alexa had never been out from under our family protection umbrella by her parents and sisters by more than 15 to 30 minutes her entire life. I remember thinking, that will never work.
But it did work. Here we are packing everything up and heading out. John was so stressed, I thought he was going to have a heart attack. We actually had to stay up there in Erie for a couple of days because he was afraid to go home and leave her up there. So we stayed, I don't even know if she knew that we were there or not, but needless to say, we had to stay up there for a couple of days until we were sure everything would work out. And on the way home, and our daughter was also with us, our middle daughter was also with us, they were both crying their eyes out. And John was so white, there was no blood in his lips or his face. I was genuinely scared. I was the only one that was like, of course she can do it. Of course she'll be fine. Because I already knew through other conferences and other events and whatever, you know, that I had already known the successes that could be there and would be there. Now, this is one of my favorite ones because it kind of is a synopsis, a really fast synopsis of all the things that she has done in her life that became a part of who she is today and a part of building that inner strength. So just going to rallies, anytime you can find any kind of events that are happening here, she is with her IEP in the lower left corner, leading that. But anytime you can find rallies that are happening, testifying before Congress, she's done that. She's done a number of things with the ARC and with the other advocacy organizations in Pennsylvania. And now she's also on a self-advocacy board in Pennsylvania. But anytime you can find these things, these are all experiences, and all these experiences help our children and they help ourselves.
We have various other stories that mimic and duplicate this same sort of thing, but the theme is the same. My desire to cocoon and protect my daughter from hurt and disappointment ought to have been a deterrent to her growth and success had it been left to me to make the decisions. Kathy's history and experience with adults with disabilities allowed her to see a future that I could not. I could not see past my own restrictive emotions, as well as the play it safe mentality of the system. I didn't mean anything bad by it, and neither did the system. but we were afraid of risk. We were afraid of the consequences of failure. I suspect these feelings and concerns are typical and continue. The value of listening to young adults with disabilities is an undervalued tool that individuals and families new to the world of living with a disability cannot be overstated. I have learned that it's the risk of not trying that is the greater failure.
It's actually listening to all ages. We actually really need to listen to every single age. And people often ask us, so how can I do it? Quote, they would sometimes say, you have these resources, but I don't. Well, that's true. We had a certain set of resources due to our own experiences, but all laws and regulations are on all of our sides. We just have to learn them. We have to learn what parts support us, and we have to figure out what resources do we have and then to build from there. Your pathway may be different, but your results can be the same. Over the next few days, weeks, or months, think about all you've heard today from John's previous attitudes, assumptions, and beliefs, and imagine how different Alexa's life would be had we not challenged all of those barriers. Now we need to ask ourselves, are the stressors and amount of effort that goes into pursuing these goals worth the outcomes? So please feel free to contact us at any time with questions or comments. And any of these, we're actually going to be creating blogs and webinars, and some will become e-courses, but all of these will become blogs at least. That will be on a brand new website that's at the bottom there. So nothing's on there yet. But John is also going to be doing all of the inventions that have been created out of our home. So simple, low tech type of things. He's going to be uploading those and show how to build each of those by way of video. Okay, thank you very much for the time today. Are there any questions?
How does someone access?
First question, how does someone access these types of advanced technologies? Does insurance pay for this out of pocket? How do people from low-income families, immigrant families, families without insurance gain access to expensive accommodations like this? John's been working on this a lot, so you take that, John.
Unfortunately, the answer is a little bit of everything. Persistence, very few of Alexa's technology solutions happen without a doctor's prescription to start. I'm adamant about that. Working through the physical therapists, the occupational therapists, a long paper trail. Just to give you an example, when her wheelchairs do start to age out approximately every 4 to 5 years, we start the replacement process 6 months in advance. Some of the other things are homemade, home built. I'm a gadget guy. I worked at a career tech school where I had access to certain machines and things that I know a lot of others don't. But there's a lot of things that are off the shelf that you can do and adapt. Insurance, we've had to challenge. We've been denied once or twice, had to file appeals, and you just need to be prepared for a long, grueling access of resources.
And also, don't forget, there are advocates out there. There are a lot of organizations that are out there that will be able to help you. You just have to find the right ones. We can't make an assumption that every advocate can do everything. So if you find that you're looking for technology, then you can always start with someone that sells the technology. Oftentimes, John will even ask at the tech shop, what are those things? Wherever they buy the wheelchairs. I can't think of the name of the stores right now that sell the medical equipment, and they can even tell you how to get started. Or Amanda, if you want, you can even just email us and we can help you personally. We can help you to think things through if you have a certain person that you're thinking of in terms of. But I see Diane Perry also wrote a comment, a very nice comment beneath that. Thank you, Diane. And Diane is with the Peel Center in Pennsylvania. So they are a very large advocacy organization. So even if you call them, they can even tell you where is the best place to go to start, whatever is of interest that you need to pursue, that you're wanting to pursue.
And different resources are available at different times. OVR became a player once Alexa had graduated from high school, and particularly going to school and once she had a job. We were beneficiaries of a local waiver to help support services and equipment as well as a county program we'd never even heard of, which put a lot of the home automation into her house. We didn't even know some of these things existed until you're eligible for it, or some of the physical therapists and professionals help guide you there.
And one of the other, oh, here's another question first. Would you mind if I contact you directly? If yes, then what is the best way to reach you? Yes, we realized we forgot to put the email address on the last
Can you type it
slide. So I will,
Can you type Mom's business email?
you can. Oh, we have, like I said, we have our middle daughter who is here, and she, as our techie, and she is going to put that email there, but it is K, you could just Kathy, here's the easiest one for you to remember is Kathy at brillconsultingllc.com. That's the easiest one to remember, and I will respond to you personally, absolutely. But one of the other things I wanted to mention, Amanda, is that you have to keep track of these things, and you gotta be persistent. You'll hear a lot of no's. You'll hear a lot of no, you can't do that. No, this won't be paid for by insurance. Or no, it's impossible to go through this. You have to be persistent, keep a long log, as John had mentioned, and stay on track with that, and keep all the parties together. That's another secret that we discovered accidentally when Alexa was in high school and she was transitioning. OVR would say that they're supposed to be a part of it. Of course, the IEP team, they were part of the IEP team, but nobody spoke to one another. No one. It was like one wasn't there for the meeting, the IEP meeting, when they should have been, and then said that they'll catch up with somebody else later. It was just a mess. So John inadvertently kept all these notes as to who was present, created his own minutes, handed them out to everyone, whether they were there or they weren't there, and then got the conversation started as to what the discussion was with everybody. And if someone didn't answer, he'd call them out on that. He'll say, hey, you know, like OVR, I didn't hear a response from you yet. This is your part, correct? Just to keep everybody on the same page. So that was wonderful. Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you so much for coming today. We really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you for allowing us to share our story.
Yes.
Hopefully we can help others.
Oh, we still have 5 minutes.
I want to thank you, Kathy and John. That was an eye-opening and highly informative presentation. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of those who joined us for today's presentation. And we look forward to seeing you in the next one. We hope you enjoy the rest of your conference experience. Take care, everyone.
How can I see what they said?
Are we off?
Wait.
Let me make sure we're on things.